Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Martin, and we are alive in vivo on YouTube. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe because we are also a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Yes, Familia, we're getting legitimate in this whole podcast fantasy football podcasting industry. Make sure you get your rookie portfolio. I mean, oh my goodness, I'm telling you, Familia, it is on. I mean, I'm telling you, the NFL prospect guide just came out a little more than a week ago. You get more than 200 profiles from NFL Films. Greg Cosell, you get some of the best analysis from people like Wes Huber, from Graham Barfield, amigos of the show, Scott Barrett, Joe Dole. I mean, all the heavy hitters in the industry. I mean, they're just there. You're getting rookie rankings, Devy rankings, everything for $25. And you know what, Familia? I'm going to give you 10% off. Put in the promo code Familia22, or if you're doing it in Spanish, Familia22, and you get 10% off that. You get 10% off your subscription, whatever you order. So, Familia, we're going to have some fun tonight. We are going to have some fun tonight. We have been having some fantastic guests on the Familia FFP podcast this off season, and we're putting another one out there. Our invitado de lujo right now. He's finishing out what I'm calling the Chicago Triangle, as he's our third guest in 3 weeks, who is from the second city. Yes. He is a Bears fan, but he's also a 5-tool player in this fantasy space because he's a fantastic analyst, first and foremost. He writes for Chai City Sports. It's also called Chai City. He's an amazing designer who has even donated his time to create logos and raise money for Fantasy Cares. Last year during the Scott Fish Bowl, he designed this shirt, Familia. So our group of thieves, our den of thieves who are all in the fantasy podcasting industry. So he designed this shirt. So he's also a podcast host. And Familia, I am not shy about saying the fact that I have voice envy with him. I don't have this with too many, but this is one guy I have voice envy with. Him and Herms are two of the ones. But yeah, and he's also, his beef jerky is off the hook, so you have to check it out. Go to John's Elgin Market. So Familia, let's welcome in un gran bienvenido to mi amigo Steven Johnson. ¿Cómo estás, Steve? Steven.
Thank you.
Esteban.
That was a great intro, man. I don't know if I've had that full fill there with the full list of things, but excited to talk some football. Excited to I just have a one-on-one conversation, talking some wide receivers and diving right into it.
Oh, I gotta love it. Well, I mean, it's as I mentioned a little bit. And this is something that we had a phone conversation yesterday. We're 2 weeks from the draft, and I think everybody's had their fill of the draft. And now we're just starting to poke holes in every prospect. Nobody's, it's almost to the point where none of these prospects are going to be actually make it in the NFL. None of the quarterbacks are going to start. It's just, so it's like, okay, that's one of the vows that I made. I'm not gonna go crazy these last couple of weeks. I want to get some content that is still a little evergreen that we can look at, because after in 2 weeks we're going to be able to do some actual projections. But I mentioned earlier you're a Bears fan. I always love to know, when did that love for the Bears start for you?
It's been a lifelong thing. For I think my younger years, it was kind of bugging my dad when he was the diehard fan, and like I wanted to go outside and play. But I'd probably say I was 7 or 8 years old is when the game really started to come together for me. And unfortunately, that was the Cade McNown years. The good old UCLA guy.
I'm sorry.
On
behalf
of
Southern
disaster
California,
happened.
I'm sorry.
So not necessarily the best time to become a diehard Bears fan, but it wasn't enough to deter me from still watching them today and rooting for them growing up. Anthony Thomas, the A Train out of Michigan, doing his thing, and then obviously the defensive minded years with Brian Urlacher and the Super Bowl run in 2006. It was definitely a lot of ups, plenty of downs, obviously a lot of downs lately, but hopefully new regime, new front office, new coaching staff. It's all coming together here.
And that's something that's going to be kind of coming up, just kind of looking at what that front office and actually really what the coaching staff's what they're going to do with Justin Fields and everything like that. And we'll talk about them. But first off, I just wanted to welcome in a couple of our guests. Dame Overboard, muchas gracias. Yes, we will be talking about the waddle, 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 waddle. You know, we're going to do we might even do the dance a little bit. I'm going to have to clip that one. So Dame Overboard, muchas gracias, nuestra dama, and also our good friend Alberto, buenas noches, and so I love it when the guests are kind of our invitados are kind of saying hello to one another. So last week's chat was just off the hook, but just looking at this team at your Bears, I mean, obviously there's plenty of excitement around Justin Fields. He had some big games and in big moments. That the Monday Night Football game against the Steelers was a big one.
Yep.
Is what's your level of excitement with him? And my second part of the question is, would you want to? They don't have a first round pick. Do you want to see them go O-line or receiver?
With Justin, I mean, I think my shirt says it all. I've got the throwback with the Strawberry Fields Forever, except Justin Fields Forever. This is the most excited I've been about a quarterback since Jay Cutler was traded to the Bears back in 2008. And, I tell you, it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, everything just fell into the Bears' lap. And now knowing that there's a new coaching staff in place that will hopefully work to his strengths versus just trying to run what the coach wants to run, which is what Matt Nagy did. There's a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, but there's also a portion of Bears fans are like, oh, well, I don't think that they believe Justin's the guy. They believe he's the guy. He's going to be the guy. They're going to build around him. They're doing the right thing. And in the second round, I'm anticipating that they're going to use both their second round picks, their original pick and the one they got in the Khalil Mack trade, to help the offense, both with an offensive tackle, get somebody at left tackle to guard for Justin Fields, as well as a wide receiver. Would love to see somebody like George Pickens out of Georgia be the guy there. But there are so many options at wide receiver. It is a deep wide receiver class. I'm very excited that things are kind of lining up in that direction. And the fact that, there's a possibility, we could see one of these first round discussed names drop to the second round and, the Bears being ready to pounce on them.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I've been to Chicago a couple times. Probably, I will say, probably the nicest people for a big city that I've ever seen, with tremendous pride. And I know it's huge sports fans, and I just want nice things because, I mean, I will admit that while the Rams were on their sojourn or whatever you want to call it in St. Louis, I did split the allegiance between the Miami Dolphins and the NFC North rival Green Bay Packers. So sorry, I know, sorry.
Yeah.
But I want nice things. I want to see quarterback greatness. So I want, and last year coming out of the draft, Justin Fields was probably, he was very close for me with Trevor Lawrence right after, right. He was definitely my number 2 quarterback that I had on my board. And I was thrilled to see him go there because I think that's a fan base that's just, that deserves it.
And it's funny because you look at that entire class and, even, can make the argument for Justin Fields that, if he came out this year, he'd be the number 1 overall pick. And so there's kind of like that sense of, okay, maybe the Bears did make the right decision. Yeah, it sucks that they gave up a top 10 pick in the process of that trade with the Giants. But in the grand scheme of things, given the way that things have graded out with this quarterback class, pros and cons.
I'd love to see more receivers because I mean I do have a firm belief in Darnell Mooney, but I think you always like to see that second threat outside. I want. Plus, hey, Yeah, if he becomes a good quarterback, that's going to be good for fantasy. More points, more fantasy points for everybody. Por favor.
Absolutely.
So, first off, I want to do a quick baseball shout out since we're going to take about a 1 minute aside to baseball. Shout out to Clayton Kershaw, 7 perfect innings today. So, yeah,
Were you upset?
no,
No?
not at all.
Okay. All right.
I was not upset because I know how close he was. I know how close he was to thinking it might be it last October when he walked off the mound. He was very close to Tommy John surgery from what I understand, and even he said in his post game interview that he didn't pick up a baseball till January, and
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
so I mean, actually, the only upsetness that I have is toward the ownership, the owners who did the lockout, because if we would have had a regular spring training, he would have been built up for 100 pitches. And I think if he throws the seventh and the eighth and ninth inning, I think he finishes off. And I would have loved to have seen that, because I mean, he's already thrown one. I saw him throw one. I saw him close a couple other times, but that's.
I mean, he was on a roll today, and it was just like, wow, it happened.
Yeah, and it was funny. Like, I actually was working on the show sheet for this, and then all of a sudden I get the text alert that from MLB at Bat that he's on rolling. So I thought, okay, let me go to MLB.com, and that's when he pulled up. So I was just like, oh, great, all right. So 30 seconds of a baseball game.
And then Gary Sanchez of all people to then come up with the first hit. It's like the guy can't hit to save his life, and of course he's the one that goes and does it. It's just it's one of those things. Like Gary Sanchez irritated the heck out of me in fantasy for a solid 2 years there, and I'm just like, watching him be the guy.
And and Dame, I tell you, yes, you could tell he was sincere. And when I could tell he was sincere, is that he was saying, look, there are bigger fish to fry. There are bigger goals that they have ahead of him. He wants a ring more than he wants a perfect game. So, though I know he's also good friends with he's also developed the friendship with Sandy Koufax. So Koufax has one. So I'm sure I'm sure he would have liked to have a bookend with him, but who knows? He's got 30 more starts, hopefully, to take another shot at it. But so I do want to know. I mean, it's a pretty fine. It's a pretty definitive line in Chicago between North Side, South Side, Bears. I mean, Cubs and White Sox. Which side of the line are you on?
I'm a North Sider. I am a Cubs guy, born and raised Cubs, and yeah, it's a little tough these days to be a Cubs fan. But Seiya Suzuki giving us some hope. He has been on a tear. That signing is looking fantastic. So absolutely love what I've seen out of them, and there's some prospects that are going to be coming up here in the next couple of years. So fingers crossed that it will be a very short-lived rebuild here. But it's nice to see them get back to the small ball side of things while the South Side is mashing anything that comes close to the strike zone so far here in this early season.
Yeah, it is my dream that the next Moneyball will be a team that doesn't strike out a lot. Players have some power, but they don't sell out for power. They sell out for contact and line drive power, and they steal some bases. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for much, and that they play defense. So
yeah.
So Tampa Bay Rays, please do that for me, because you guys seem to be the science experiment that do that one. And I will say, I have always had a soft spot in my heart for the Cubs. So just going back to, I mean, because when I started to become a Dodger fan, the Cubs weren't very good. So and one of my favorite Dodgers from when I was a kid, Rick Monday, played for the Cubs for right before he got traded from the Cubs to the Dodgers. So and actually saved the flag. So as a member of the Cubs. So yeah, so he gave me the great play-by-play of that one. So good side. No, I need to know what 2016 what was where were you and what was the feeling when Brian to Rizzo?
So that whole week leading up to that night was a complete disaster. I'm gonna get in way too much detail here, but I'll make it quick. So I ended up getting hand, foot, mouth.
Oh my God! Ay Dios mío!
So I'm in quarantine for a week at my in-laws' house because they were in Hawaii for 2 weeks, and so I'm sitting here in this house just laid up in just agony, watching this 3-0 hole that they dig themselves into. And so the first night back in my house out of quarantine was game 7. And so I'm sitting on the couch, like half the time I've got my hoodie over my face when the Indians were up, and then I'm gonna forget who it was that hit just that line drive of a homer to tie it off of Aroldis
Oh,
Chapman.
Rajay Davis.
Yeah, Rajay Davis, and like my heart just sank. It just sank. But then just everything from the rain delay to that top of the 10th and just everything, it was just I mean, I picture it all like clearly in my mind. I cried like a baby. We went to the parade a couple days later. I mean, it was one of those moments where you never think it's going to actually happen, and when it does, it's just incredible. Absolutely
Eh,
incredible.
oh man. Well, I know you get to live through all the Bulls championships, but
Yep.
this one's different, right?
Yeah, we were spoiled back in the 90s, to say the least. And now, we're just happy if the Bulls make the playoffs this year, even though they're probably going to get spanked by the Bucks. But you know, it's Chicago sports lore. It's the bar is low on most occasions, even though fans believe they can do anything that they you know can set their mind to, even if all odds are stacked against them.
So I have to know. I've been to Wrigley once. Actually saw it was during the Sammy Sosa era, and we sat in right field and got to see him do his little lap around the outfield, and we cheer.
Hustle.
And Alex Gonzalez actually hit a walk-off home run in the extra inning, so it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. But I tell you, my wife and I went to Murphy's across the street right afterwards, having
Gotta go to Murphy's.
best black and
bleachers.
best black and tan I've ever had. Ever had.
It looks a lot different these days in Wrigleyville. It's a different world.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I hope to get back and hopefully, get to treat you to black and tan, and we get to, get back to Murphy's, and and I'll have you show me around. So gotta love it.
Sounds like a plan.
Oh man. Well, as on this next section, we call it chisme, which is Spanish for gossip. It's kind of a little play on words for our news section. So the Baker Mayfield goes on a podcast, the You Never Know podcast, and says he has no clue where he's going to play. And obviously he's just, this is like a Mexican novela. I'm telling you, it's just like a Mexican novela. It's the stare downs and that looks of shock and everything like that. Where would you like to see him play? I mean, I don't even think I still think there's an outside chance that he plays if they hear that Watson is suspended. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, the landing spots dried up so quickly in free agency after all those trades happened, and just the wild offseason that it's been already so far. Really, I can't picture him really falling into any starting role in the league right now. Like, I don't think that Seattle is going to trade for him. Honestly, outside of that, I'm struggling to find another landing spot that isn't covered by a potential first round draft pick quarterback landing there and him being used as a bridge kind of like Jared Goff is being used in Detroit. It seems as though Cleveland is more than happy to hold on to him, basically to say, okay, well, we know Deshaun's probably going to get 4 games for, everything that happened this past year and a half. So, let's just keep him there. And whether or not he even wants to show up, that's a whole nother, chapter we haven't even gotten to yet. But the guy played through a torn labrum. Like just the shortest end of the stick possible that this guy could have been dealt with. And it just blows my mind that they're just so willing to just shove him off and say, see you later, thanks for nothing, despite the fact that, they are a lot better than what they were when they first drafted him.
It's totally amazing, and you're right. I mean, I do feel like it's. I mean, I know pro sports is a cold meritocracy, but that's cold blooded. The guy played. The guy looked like the Bionic Man. The $6 million man. By the end of the, he was just like, and I couldn't believe it. How he was able to play through all those injuries, and you could tell that they were limiting him, and so I just, I wish they could do right by him. Obviously, they have to make sure to do right by the organization. Alberto mentioned Carolina. It's on the one hand, it makes sense because Sam Darnold was really bad last year. He was bordering on historically bad, and but they've got a lot of money tied up into him. And are you tying up in money into a couple of first round draft picks and just say, hey, let's have a competition? But that one is really, I don't know how you justify that to your fan base, especially when you struck out on all the other quarterbacks, the Russell Wilsons, the Deshaun Watsons, everybody, and nobody wants to take Carolina's money apparently. So, yeah, I think it would be hilarious if he went to training camp. I think they'd almost have to do another Hard Knocks just for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I just can't envision that scenario. Like, I'd give him all the credit in the world if he does show up and say, listen, I'm going to honor the contract that I signed. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be a good teammate for this team, and just make the Browns feel terrible if this Deshaun Watson situation goes south on them and they turn back into the Browns for all of this draft capital that they gave up to get him. I mean, I'm just trying to think of just like the positive angle that Baker can take with that, and it's like literally like that's it. Because again, the places have dried up. Yeah, Carolina could be a place, but again, like you mentioned, how do you feed that to your fan base? I mean, even bringing Cam Newton back, it's like you tried that, and then trying to relight that flame, and again, like Seattle with Drew Lock. I mean, maybe even Marcus Mariota with Atlanta. Like, is that the final like option there for the Falcons? And it's like you just struggle to come up with more, landing spots, which is crazy because you think back like 3-4 years ago, you could argue that there were 10 replaceable quarterbacks in the NFL. And now that number has shrunk so much because the game has gotten so much more wide open for offenses and made the game easier for quarterbacks. I tell you, it's a rock and a hard place for Baker Mayfield right now, more than anything.
And you know what? I feel like he has to. I feel like he can't not show up because you know what? He's obviously playing for his next job, and he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to look like a malcontent. So you almost have to just wear it and go for it. So I just think this is going to be one of those get your popcorn ones and there's going to be fun updates all the time. So hey, we got a couple other friends in the Mr. Scampers referring to the week of the Cubs. So to come back from the comeback to win Game 7. Look at this fellow thief, Craig Ruth, king of the gifs. Oh my goodness. So yes, familia. This is a gracias for joining us, familia. Gracias for being part of the familia. And one last one, kind of like to transition us to talk about wide receivers. T. Higgins repaired labrum. It's you never like to see an off-season surgery, but looks like he had it early enough that it's not going to be impacting. That's such a talented wide receiver crew. Obviously, guy leading off, we're going to talk about him, but Ohio's not far from Illinois.
Nope.
Is it?
Driving distance for Canton.
There you go. There you go. Yes, I remember you telling me that was not a. I'm sure it was not as fun going back. So
No, not at all.
but I mean, any worry on this one? Yeah,
I mean, in my mind, he is the guy that you need to go out and get if you're dealing with some weary owners. If this news does get to them and they think, okay, Jamar Chase is in town, obviously he's solidified himself as the number one receiving option there, and maybe T. Higgins isn't the guy because he's dealing with a pretty serious repair. But I don't believe that that's the case. And you look at what T. Higgins has been able to do, had 74 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And that's just in 14 games last year. He missed 3 games last year, and then he put up over 300 yards in 4 playoff games. But I mean, everything started to click once everything started to click for Jamar Chase. And so I think, that the mesh was working. And I don't see that faltering off just because he was able to get that maintenance done on something that he didn't necessarily want to say, or take the Michael Thomas route, I guess is the best way to
yeah.
put it, and put off the surgery and say, no, I can heal myself. It's like, no, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to get it cleaned up, I'm going to be ready for training camp, we're going to be ready to roll and pick right back up where we left off last season, and this time actually win the Super Bowl. But again, he was on the right track. Everything was pointing up for T. Higgins. And again, if there's a situation in which you can get him at a little bit of a discount, you go and do it. I mean, you don't hesitate based on this. If it was like an ACL or something, okay, maybe a little bit more concern there, but labrum, that's something that you can come back from. And I think it's something that is not going to be an issue given T. Higgins' age and just the way that he's been performing here heading into year 3.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I mean, once he gets back, and is able to, out of a sling and everything like that. I mean, upper body work, bench pressing, that kind of stuff isn't going to be as easy for him to do. He might have to hold off on that for a while. So maybe some of the hand fighting, but he's such a talented receiver. I mean, he's not one of those guys that's really very much it's a physical receiver. He's just, I mean, he's actually very graceful and great route runner. So hopefully that is he doesn't have to engage in any hand fighting next year with the DBs to be able to actually get his job done. So I think it's great because, well, let's get into this. Let's get into this because his teammate is part of what we're leading off with. Because I always loved the kid. I'm old enough to remember such and such a things. I'm old enough to remember the '85 Bears. So a Super Bowl shuffle season. So yes, I actually that was the year I graduated high school. So and I just so happened to have dinner with some friends last night. Shout out to Tim, Tina, Monica, Kathy, Cece. Hello, hola. I hope you're watching on the replay if you're not in the chat. But it used to be the year 3 was the breakout season for the receiver, and it's really not the case anymore. We're seeing some breakouts as much earlier, some as rookies. One of the guys is a possibility. Definitely year 2 is when guys are coming. I mean, 2021 it was Justin Jefferson. He took an even bigger step forward from his great rookie year. Michael Pittman became 1,000-yard receiver in his year 2. AJ Brown in 2020, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin all had fantastic seasons as year 2 receivers. So we're starting to see that breakout age kind of happen more. So Again, as we've talked about, we don't want to poke holes at the wide receiver crop in the NFL draft. So we're looking at the year two guys. We had a big breakout at the top, and this is a guy who's zooming up dynasty draft boards. And there are others, and so we're going to talk about 8 players total. Let's take a look at them. So vámonos. Let's take a look at them. So starting off, Jamar Chase. He went in round 1 last year, number 5 overall. There was that big question: Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. Where were you on that one? Where were you on that argument?
Like the Bears' new GM, Ryan Poles, I am a firm believer in building the trenches, so I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I will eat crow on it. That was absolutely the wrong call, and yeah, giving Joe Burrow a couple fewer seconds to get rid of the ball doesn't necessarily matter if you have a guy like Jamar Chase on the other end of that pass.
Just a special player. And honestly, you know what? I was on the Penei Sewell side too. And I actually, friend of the show, Yasmin Quintana, I had her on right before the Super Bowl. And I publicly apologized to her because she and I went back and forth. She wanted the receiver, and I said, "Oh, you got to get the guy. You got to get the big fat guy to keep him to keep Joe Burrow clean." But well, now they're getting guys to keep him clean, and they're able to keep Chase. But this is a guy who has zoomed up the draft boards. Dynasty value, his expert consensus rankings, all these rankings that we're going to have, Familia, are all from Fantasy Pros. He's the wide receiver 1, and he's the 102 overall. So Jonathan Taylor, then this guy, and so a lot of things just kind of were interesting. He went for 1,455 yards last year on 81 receptions, caught 13 touchdowns. He had that phenomenal run at the beginning, and then he had that amazing week 17 where he went for 266 yards on 11 receptions, 3 touchdowns. If you had him in week 7, did you have him on any teams in week 17?
No, I did not.
Oh,
I did not. I wish I did, but I did not.
it was. Yeah, I didn't have him on it, and thankfully I didn't go up against him on. So that would have been just frightening. But what are uh, I've got a couple of things that I want to see him work on. But what are your kind of thoughts on him?
It's funny because a year ago we were talking about a receiver that had the yips, that would be dropping
Yes.
passes and would be uh, just a little bit of skittish when it came to catching the ball in traffic. And now we're talking about a guy who I believe is going to finish as the number 1 receiver in 2022. There is so much opportunity for him, and you just look at the game logs and the stat lines to what Chase was able to put up in his rookie season, and the fact that there was a bit of a lull there midway through the season because teams caught on to what he was able to do in just stretching the field and running by players. And it seemed there for a second, it's like, okay, teams figured out Jamar Chase. And then Jamar Chase finally adapted. And here we are with a fantastic postseason, a strong end to the year. Like you mentioned, the Kansas City game, the Baltimore game. And it's just an arrow trending up. Now, knowing that he was able to get over those issues, and yeah, target numbers weren't in line with what you'd expect out of almost 1,500-yard season. But I don't think there's going to be any issue eclipsing 150 targets this year, especially now that he's gotten those kinks out of the way and is able to, just focus on going after. And I believe he said it earlier this week, that receiving triple crown. He wants to do what Cooper Kupp
Ooh.
just did, and I think he could do it pretty easily given his athletic complex.
Well, Cooper Kupp was pushing 200 targets last year, and honestly, the way this offense, with a year, an off season of health for Joe Burrow, not an off season of rehab, I think it's special. There were two stats that really stuck to me, and there were a couple of notes in the chat that I want to throw out there. But he was just number 20 in targets, because you mentioned about him taking a big step in targets. His catch percentage was only 63.3%. And I'm like, that was number 140 in the league. To me, that is something that, I mean, if he gains 10 percentage points, I mean, that is huge. And also, he led the league in drops last year. He was number one in drops. Everybody makes a big deal out of it, but you know what? Devontae Adams led the league in drops, and he did not have 1,455 yards as a rookie. So I'm like, if he cuts those drops in half, oh, geez, all of a sudden, I mean, just steps forward like that. I mean, I think he's great. He had 9+ targets in 7 games, and to me, that's one of the most important steps. I mean, it's a simple step, but I mean, that's fantasy points just waiting to happen.
Right. You mentioned Devontae Adams. I mean, even Deontay Johnson last year, everybody was knocking Deontay Johnson for the drops and saying he couldn't get over it. And he ended up being like a 6th-round pick because of his drops. And meanwhile, he's giving you round 2, round 3 value based on what he's able to do on the field. It's something you can't shy away from, knowing that athleticism exists and the fact that he has such a strong chemistry with Joe Burrow. It's just asking for trouble avoiding a player like that.
And not long, probably about a month ago, I had friends of the show, Cal Shoemake and Dan Turner, Eagle Dan, and they were talking about zero RB, and I believe it was Dan said that Jamar Chase would be his number 101. If he had the 101, he would take Jamar Chase even in redraft over JT, over CMC. He's going to do that. So I think I think there's enough room for improvement. I mean, yeah, he did all that on 128 targets. I think he could be a 10 target a game guy. So, we got some comments in the house. I got to throw watched Jamar Chase highlights last night. Yep. Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. So,
putting it nicely.
And Nuestra Dama, yeah, props to the Bengals. They listen to their guy. And Joey, muy caliente, mis dos amigos.
Joey!
Órale. Hola. Oh, yes, it is. You should never play football in traffic. No. Dame, it's coming. ARSB, the talk is coming. Don't worry. We're getting there. I'm not going to make you wait till the 4th round for us to talk. So yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And Derrick Henry would not mind playing. Oh geez. Yeah. No one was thinking the yips. No one was thinking the yips. He was going to figure it out. He's too talented. So and Joey's. Oh yeah, you're right. FYF crew, as Joey told me over the last week via text, the FYF crew undefeated. Muchas gracias for becoming a part of La Familia. So thank you. So and we had some, Dame. You were talking Waddle. So Jalen Waddle. It's there. There was so much excitement around him. He was the next pick after Jamar Chase. Ended up as a wide receiver 13 last year. Went over 1,000 yards, 1,015, 6 touchdowns, 104 catches. He got 140 targets in 16 games. Right now, he is the 212 in expert consensus rankings. He's the wide receiver 11. One stat that really stuck out to me, he had 439 yards after the catch. And this is going to be a Mike McDaniel offense. And you see how they used Deebo Samuel, how they used Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, those guys, getting them the ball in space and letting him run. Does this, obviously we'll talk about the elephant in the room that's going to be on the other side, or maybe the cheetah, as we like to say. But yeah. What kind of level of excitement for him to take a step forward?
Man, I almost wonder. He's one of the more difficult players I have kind of pinning and putting my finger on for what to expect in 2022. Just the way that the Dolphins attacked this offseason, it just kind of turned everything upside down on its head. They added pass catching backs, they added wide receivers, they did as much as they possibly could to make Tua fail proof. And whether or not that actually happens, We'll see. But you mentioned the Debo situation and what McDaniel was able to do with him out in San Francisco. And honestly, it would not shock me whatsoever to see Waddle in that role, despite Waddle not necessarily being that involved in those end arounds and doing that type of setup within the offense. And whether or not that happens, I guess that's my biggest question, is whether or not that will actually occur. Because again, I don't think he's going to reach 140 targets again this year. If he does, that means there was a serious injury somewhere within that offense. And it's just not one of those things that I can see, especially when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill that is now catching passes in Miami.
Yeah, that's the thing. I look at him and I was just, Tyreek Hill, that's the guy who should be getting 10 targets a game. So if you're talking a guy who's going to get 160, 170 targets, you start with him. And what's left? And are they going to be a primarily running passing team? And they're not, because any McDaniel comes from the Shanahan tree and they like to run the ball. So they like to have a balanced attack and go from there. So I just, it's going to be, it's hard to project even a better year. I mean, I'd like to think that even if his targets go down, he could still eclipse 1,000 yards because of the yak ability for him. So, I still have hope for him. Because he's so ultra talented, and this is going to be such, if things break right, this could be a fun offense. This really could be a fun offense I'm not the one who says that Tua is not the right guy. I mean, obviously they should have picked Justin Herbert. Yes, we understand that, but I still think he's worthy of a first round talent. And he had so many speed guys around him at Alabama. I think I think he'll know what to do with them. So, man, ooh. Any other one? You want to waddle? No. You do not have to feel obligated.
I'll pass on that.
I'll be the one. I'll be the one. Make myself. I'll make myself. I know Jalen Waddle does the best one. Annie Agar is the one does the second best one. So yeah, big ups to her. Speaking of which, I should have said. I don't know if you saw. Do you follow Annie on Twitter?
I think so, maybe.
So
I've seen plenty of the conferences.
The conferences.
Yes.
Well, yesterday was her birthday, and she was in Chicago. She happened to be in Chicago.
She's very critical of the Bears, which I don't appreciate.
Well, this was funny. She was for her birthday. She wanted, for each one of the candles on her birthday cake, she wanted to do a good deed. But she did it wearing a Clay Matthews jersey. So she wanted to see if Chicago fans would accept kind acts from somebody wearing a Packers fan. And there was some good comedy in there, but yes, there was more kindness, there was more good-heartedness, which reinforced what I think of Chicagoans. So a couple people reminded her that she was wearing enemy colors, but yeah.
Depending on what area of Chicago you're in, that's asking for trouble, though.
Oh man, Simon. So yeah. Well, Steve, I'm gonna let Steven. Actually, Joey, I think on your TikTok, I think you'll if you can get Steven to go on your TikTok, I think you'll blow up on there. So it'll go viral. Oh, let's get back on track. We got Devonta Smith to talk about. He was the number 10 pick last year. So, I mean, boom, 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 line them up. I think all these three receivers, if you talk about the current class is well regarded, but I think each three of these receivers would have easily gone ahead of this class. But, there were so many question marks about his size, his body mass, the BMI, everything like that. I mean, it was disturbing. I was so sick of hearing about it, probably by this point last year. Still ended up with wide receiver 30 years on a team that didn't run the ball a lot. They actually didn't pass the ball a lot. They actually had the fewest pass attempts, number 32 in pass attempts, 494. So they're the only team under 500 attempts. Still, he had finished with 916 yards and five touchdowns. ECR has him as wide receiver 18 going in the fourth round. One of the things that's a big concern, he only had 3 games with 9+ targets last year. And you talked about Waddle being a hard one to kind of keep kind of project. What does the crystal ball tell you on Devonta Smith?
I was very heavy on the Devonta Smith train over Jalen Waddle train last year when it came to draft time. I still am. I do believe that all of this does come down to Jalen Hurts' performance. Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, they're not going to help things whatsoever within that offense. So, in all honesty, I would place money on Philly dipping into that receiver pool one more time in the first round, given that they've got 2 first-round picks out there. Did have 3, but they made a pretty smart move. But nevertheless, I think that that's going to actually, in turn, help Smith just by getting some more competent wide receivers, because Philadelphia can't do what they did a year ago, allowing Jalen Hurts to just run wild and not pass the ball. Because like you said, fewest pass attempts in the league. I believe it was 50.3% of their offensive plays were passes. You just don't hear that number these days, given the current state of NFL offenses and the way that teams run the ball. Same coaching staff, same results, maybe. But I think that Smith is in a position to take a step forward as long as Philly finally gets some better supporting cast around him, so it's not Devonta Smith or bust, which is what it kind of feels like now, given the other wide receivers currently on the team.
So we had a good question in the chat. Is there a rookie you'd like to see end up in Philly? I know we said no NFL draft. I've got one that came in mind while you're thinking. I'd love to see Drake London end up there.
I think he's going to be gone.
By the time they draft a 15. Yeah.
Which I again, I know we, like you said, we wouldn't get into to draft talk. I don't understand the hype over Drake London. I really don't. Man, there's a couple names here. I like Treylon Burks.
I do like him too.
I think he's going to be the guy. I think that Olave's a little bit too similar to what Smith brings to the table, and just isn't what they need to roll with. I'd probably say that Burks is the pick there, if I had to guess.
Burks would be. I think he's getting a little bit of a bad name, but I think I would like to see a big receiver going to him. Burks is so talented. I know he's raw, and he's probably the guy they're picking more zits off of him than anybody else. And I think that would be fun. One guy that finished the season with no zits on him. And Dame, Midama, you've got JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Spaniard. Listen. If you watch The Princess Bride, you don't trust a Spaniard. So,
I mean, just talk about a terrible pick. I mean, there were so many people that were high on Jaws, and he just bombed. And I still try and wrap my mind around it some days. And it's just like, no, this isn't worth my time.
No. So let's go. Let's talk about somebody who's worth your time.
Okay.
Out in Michigan, Detroit Rock City, the Amon-Ra St. Brown. ARSB, Dame. Here we go. You wanted a little ARSB. Here we got it right here. These are his numbers. I mean, he finished the wide receiver 21, 90 catches, 119 targets, 912 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. He played in 16 games. Right now, his ECR is wide receiver 25, but these are the numbers that are really intriguing. From weeks 13 to 18, he caught 51 balls out of with 67 targets, 560 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 2 during that span. Only Devontae Adams was better. He was better. He had more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp. He had top 10 finishes all those weeks except for one. He had no fewer than 10 targets any of those games. I mean, it's funny. I thought that was going to make excitement for him and kind of drive his ADP out the roof. But it almost is like people are just kind of tamping down their own enthusiasm because they keep pointing out there was no Hawkinson after week 13. DeAndre Swift only played 2 of those games. It's one of those things. Somebody says, "Oh yeah, he hit a home run. He hit a home run off of a 95-mile-an-hour fastball that was straight." And it's like, yeah, you still got to hit it. So he still had to catch all those balls, still had to catch all those targets. Where do you stand on that one?
This is my mindset for that hot streak, and I was a very happy fantasy player at the end of last year with a lot of St. Brown helping me inch along in the playoffs. That being said, when Kadarrell Hodge and Trinity Benson are the 2 guys you're competing with for targets, it's almost embarrassing not to get 10 targets a game, given that those were the main options for the Lions. But the season totals from a year ago, that 912, 5 touchdowns, 90 catches. Honestly, I see that kind of being in line with what to expect for his second season. I don't think he's going to set the world on fire. You've got DJ Chark there now. TJ Hawkinson's healthy. Also, wouldn't shock me to see another receiver come into Detroit off the draft. They have the 2 first-round picks, one at the front, one at the back. The second-round pick. There's going to be some combination, whether it's defensive line, quarterback, safety, wide receiver, of those 4, taken with the 3 picks that they own in those first 2 rounds. And that might throw things off significantly for St. Brown. But I think getting healthy players back into the mix is going to dampen expectations a little bit. You mentioned he's at wide receiver 25 right now in rankings. I have him a little bit lower. I'm in the 30 range with him, just for the fact that I can't entirely trust it, but I still think a 90 catch, 900-yard season just based on being that shifty guy that can handle the slot work. That's something that still is extremely beneficial in PPR leagues, and it is something that is something I would love to have on my team. I just think it's a little far-fetched to believe that he's going to just repeat what he did in the second half of the season, given the supporting cast around him.
I think so. And you know what? And one of the things I know a lot of people bag on Jared Goff, but he is a quarterback who supported 2 1,000-yard receivers with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp.
True.
So and Cooper Kupp is that big slot guy that Amon-Ra St. Brown is that guy. So I mean, I look at that guy. He still had to get open. So and his catch percentage. I mean, look at that. I mean, he had what was that? He only 16 balls that went his way in the last 6 weeks of the season hit the ground. That's a little more than 2 a game, about 2.5 a game. I think he's got talent. I do agree that they could dip into the wide receiver pool, even because again, they're picking at the top of the 3rd, which is basically another second round pick. I mean, they might be able to get still. I mean, they got this guy in the 4th round. So I mean, you're not going to necessarily hit the lottery, the loteria, to 2 years in a row like that. But you just never know. But yeah, Dame, you're right. He might be that good. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be something to follow. I'm still going to recommend him. I haven't done. I want to wait until after the the NFL draft to actually make my full rankings. But no, I could totally see him at the very least being a wide receiver too, you know, it, at the very least doing that and still having a wonderful season. Still having a wonderful season. Now these next few guys we might be able to go through fairly quickly because they all dealt with injuries, they were underperformance, but these were all fairly highly rated, highly drafted players. Cadarius Tony, drafted in the first round, number 20 overall. He only had 420 yards receiving. He only played in 9 games, and I think that I'm intrigued because he's in New York, so there's that amount of hype. And his biggest game was against Dallas on nationally televised game of the week. He had 189 yards on 10 receptions, 13 targets. So, but he only had 5 more games after that. He battled
Right.
various injuries. He, did not have, too many targets. You're dealing with coming back from, having some injury issues. It's a new offense. Yes, Brian Dable is considered an offensive genius. Where do you stand on him? I'm he's a really hard one for me to get excited about. I do love the talent,
Yeah.
but
I mean, and you also have Daniel Jones throwing the ball,
once I
which
got
makes
this,
it
once
a
I got
little
this,
bit tougher.
I set you
I
up on
mean,
that one.
yeah, it's hard, but at the same time, the injury riddledness of the Giants receiving room, whether it's Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard, or Kadarius Tony, it makes you wonder who's going to be the guy to stay healthy, and it's a situation that I want to stay away from, but then I see that wide receiver 40 number, and I'm like, given what Brian Dable's been able to work with and the fact that a lot of those receivers have been in the kind of the same mold as Kadarius Tony, they've got this first round draft pick they spent on him. Maybe there's worse ways to spend a pick around grabbing the wide receiver 40. It's almost like, yeah, I'll take the risk knowing exactly what's going to happen, but the benefits could be there. You could reap the rewards. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll show up.
Yeah, it is one of those things, and I think the other thing is because there's so much talk that they need to rebuild the trenches. They definitely need to put more of a wall in front of Daniel Jones. So I don't think they're going to be investing in any wide receivers, and unless they go get Jarvis Landry or AJ Green or Julio Jones, which I don't see them doing that because they wanted to get their cap right. This might be the room. This might be the wide receiver
Yeah.
room. So why, you're right. You spent that first round draft pick, use it. You Kenny Galladay, I'm very intrigued by this team because of the presence of Dable. Because I think there is going to be something that comes out of here. I'm also high on Saquon Barkley for this season just because of the coming back from the injury, and I think he's going to perform for with it being a walk year for him possibly. So,
Right.
well, another guy who dealt with some injuries, Rashad Bateman, only 46 catches, 68 targets, 515 yards. He was another first rounder, went number 27 overall last year to the Ravens. He did miss 5 games. Currently his ECR is number 26. He had so much excitement around him. Where were you on the excitement scale last year?
I was one of those people, and then he was drafted by Baltimore, and all that excitement went out the window. That's essentially
Yep.
how it was. I watched it happening, and I'm like, oh God, he's going to be a Raven. Because I have a rule in fantasy football: it's avoid all Baltimore receivers at all costs. Like I refuse to have them on my rosters, and no player last year was afforded more space off the line from his defender than Rashad Bateman. Over 5 yards was Rashad Bateman allowed space off the line. And look what he was able to do with that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And again, it's obviously a philosophy situation with Baltimore and running the ball, not necessarily putting a lot of focus on the pass. And yeah, you can extrapolate the numbers. Bateman would have averaged about 900 yards receiving if Jackson played all 17 games. We know he missed time, but can he eclipse 1,000 yards? Yeah, probably. But at the price tag and given the ceiling, it's not something that excites me when I'm looking at some of the other receivers in that tier.
The thing that really kind of shocked me when I was putting together some notes for this was that Lamar Jackson, I mean, well, not Lamar Jackson, the Ravens as a team threw 611 times last year, which really kind of, I thought they were in the mid 500s, something like that. So there is the part of me, like you were talking about, if he has 17 games of Lamar Jackson throwing him the ball, what's that going to look like? But you still got Mark Andrews, who's probably going to be the number one target, who's probably the number one target, easily the number one target. And it's him and Hollywood Brown as number two, fighting for the number two. And man, I mean, does he overtake Hollywood Brown? This one's, again, this, but when you're talking about like, he's number 20, we were talking about number 40 a second ago with Kadarius Tony. I like the value of Cadarius Tony over Rashad Bateman. Oh 100%. Man. Well, you know what? This feels a little bit like, you've got you're toward the end of a concert and they're asking, the people are asking for specific songs, and Mr. Scamp, actually Alberto Marroquin, he's asking for Elijah Moore, and let's give him some Elijah Moore talk. Wide receiver 50 last year, but I think there was some excitement around him. Obviously got hurt before the season, missed 6 games over the course of the season. The ECR has him wide receiver 17, didn't play from week 14 on, but he had some big games in there. He was wide receiver 2 in week 11, where he caught 8 of 11 targets for 141 yards and a touchdown. He was wide receiver 1 a couple weeks prior. He had 5 of the games that he played in, 5 of the 11 games that he played in, he had at least 8 targets. But we're expecting a step forward on Zach Wilson to make it happen. And and they have a lot of draft capital. Do they add another wide receiver to the room? It's go ahead.
I think they do. I think they do. I mean, when you have 2 top 10 picks, actually, and 2 early second round picks. I think 2 picks in the top 10 of the second round as well. It's Christmas for the Jets. That's the best way to put it. If I had to put my money on it, Wilson or Olave is probably a Jet by the end of Thursday night. That'd be my guess. But I think the drafting of another wide receiver says more about Corey Davis and what they spent to get him versus what it says about Elijah Moore. Again, like you mentioned, it comes down to Zach Wilson and him taking a step forward, getting Elijah Moore the ball accurately, which is something that did not happen last year. Moore was 81st among wide receivers in his catchable target rate. Not great numbers, but that being said, it seemed like at the end of last year, Moore and Wilson started to get on the same page. Things started working in the right direction in terms of their chemistry. But I would love to see him work a little bit more in the slot, especially now that Jamison Crowder is gone from New York as well, which I'm keeping my fingers crossed happens and he turns into a pretty solid PPR machine up there in New York.
Yeah, because also let's remember that the offensive coaching staff is from the San Francisco, the Shanahan coaching tree. So that getting him the ball in the slot, get the yak ability, that gives me a little bit of excitement. That I want to see him stay healthy. Hopefully, figures out the training regimen to keep him healthy. I mean, a lot of times guys figure that out between year 1 to year 2. So hopefully, I mean, because again, it's. You don't help the team in the training room. I've heard that plenty of times. So I want to. That's a guy I want to see. Elijah, the amigo of the show, Mauricio Gutierrez calls him. Would love to call him Elijah the astronaut. So el astronauta. So last main guy we're going to talk about, Rondale Moore. Not a lot to talk about. I mean, just his A dot was like 1.4, which just shocked me. I mean, but then again, you watch the tape that that's how he got the ball. They just would throw it to him, just easy, just easy dump offs, easy dump offs. It almost was like a running back. I mean, his big game was he caught all 11 targets in a game, but it was for 51 yards. So it's just like in week 11. But you lost Christian Kirk, you lost AJ Green. That the wide receiver core got a little thin for them, and now it's D Hop, it's Ertz, maybe James Conner fighting for some targets. It's he was this guy was someone who was very much like a draft darling, but could he, is he a guy who could take a big step forward?
I think the opportunity is there if the room doesn't change all too much with the weapons that Kyler Murray has to work with. Obviously, Christian Kirk being out is going to be probably the main benefactor there with getting more targets and more yards. He was very good against man-to-man defense. I believe he was a top 10 in separation
Yes.
when in man D as well. And so with that, again, we saw glimpses of what he was able to do. It's just a matter of putting it all together. My concern is whether or not it's just more of a gadget situation and he doesn't have that entire that skill set to put it all together and be that reliable option that Kyler Murray can look to 7-8 times a game to really get into the open space and get the yards here and there that he needs to make some more manageable second and third down situations, which, again, like you said, when your A dot's at like 1 and he's not necessarily taking off with the ball and getting the yards after the catch, what else can you do? So the opportunity is there. The growth potential is obviously there. It's just, for me, it's a question of whether or not he has the skill set to do it. And I'm on the fence about it, but everything else, he doesn't drop the ball. Again, he gets separation. Everything is there, but there's just something about him I can't fully buy in on.
And I want to like him because I want to like little guys, and but man, I mean, and I do remember one of the funniest comps that I saw last year was from Scott Fish, of all people, where he said that he reminded him of a squirrel running around. So because he just had that change of direction, that was just boom, 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 boom.
It's not a bad comp, to be honest.
Just he's got talent, but yeah, I want to see it come together. I mean, I want to think, and as amigo Joey mentioned, you've got so many vacated targets there. I want to think that the opportunity is going to be there. It's and the opportunity is going to be there with a solid quarterback. Kyler Murray is gonna be filling up the air, and I don't think they really dip into the wide receiver. I don't see them. I think it's going to be him and Zach Ertz, kind of fighting for the targets after D Hop. But yeah, I'd love to see them use him in the slot. Just kind of get him the ball in space, and see let him make some. Let him make a little magic. So yeah. Oh man, Dame overboard. One last one before we jump into kind of like a lightning round. Yeah, Dame, I'm going to tell you, if it's going to happen for Zach Wilson, it's going to happen this year. I don't think it's going to be a year 3 breakout. It's going to have to be a year 2 breakout for him. What do you think, Steven?
Jets fans won't give him year 3 if year 2 doesn't happen.
That's the thing. Exactly. They're not gonna. They're gonna hang him out to dry. They're gonna give him heavy shoes and cement shoes and jersey, and just because everything
Throw
is
him in the
legal in New
harbor.
Jersey.
Call it a day.
Yeah. Let's see him go swimming with Kramer in the Hudson River. So not to be back. So I wanted to do a quick lightning round. So there were 5 guys that I put in Amari Rogers, Tutu Atwell, Terrace Marshall, Josh Palmer, Nico Collins. If there was one guy out of that group that you saw possibly taking a step forward and being a guy that helps fantasy teams, maybe as a wide receiver 3 or a flex option? Is there one of them that you like?
I think people might think I'm crazy for this one, but I think Nico Collins is the guy out of that group. He's one of my favorites. It was apparent that there was an opportunity for him to get better when Davis Mills was on the field. Lovie Smith has said he likes what Mills has. He's going to give him that fair shot. I believe him that he's going to get that fair shot, and it's going to end up helping Nico Collins. He's going 55 to 65 wide receiver range. But when Mills was on the field, Nico Collins' output doubled from what other quarterbacks were doing with Nico Collins on the field. And I think so having that offseason to work on the chemistry, work alongside Brandon Cooks, have that full offseason is going to do wonders for him. And I think we're going to see a significant step forward being taken by Nico, and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. I'm trying to grab him anywhere I can in hopes that that all does come together, because I think there's a lot of people sleeping on what that Houston offense could potentially be if the glimpses we saw last year, both in the passing game from Mills' side as well as what the wide receiver core can do there as well between Collins and Cooks, it could surprise some people.
I agree. I think what they're going to do. They're going to invest in the defense. They're going to invest in the line. I don't think they're going to get too many receivers up high. I think they're happy with Nico Collins. I think he's I think he's a fine player. He's a good complement to Brandon Cooks, kind of the bigger target. My bigger target on there is Josh Palmer, because I think you got the quarterback, Justin Herbert. I mean, you're going to get 2,000-yard receivers out of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But I think Josh Palmer started to get some balls there at the end of the season. Especially there was a game when Keenan Allen was out, and Josh Palmer just stepped in for him and had himself a wonderful game. I really like him just because I think the Chargers are going to fill the air up with a lot of balls next year, and you want to be catching balls from Justin Herbert. And there was a question, Mr. Scamper, does anyone have anything nice to say about Terrace Marshall or?
I plead the fifth.
I'll take it for you. It's not. I like the talent. I don't like the situation. I wish I could believe that Sam Darnold was the answer, and I watched a lot of him when he was at USC. I was very high on him. It seemed major regression, and I hope he makes me eat my words, because if he's good, that means there's another quarterback out there. But I'm just, situation. No bueno. No bueno.
That's about all you can say.
Oh, man. Well, before we close up shop, there's always a fun Mexican food talk. And I know you came out west last year, so you got yourself some good authentic stuff. But Chicago is also one of the great eating cities in the world. So can you tell me any favorite dishes either place?
Oh boy. I mean, I can eat Mexican food day and night. I'm one of those weird people that will go get like 32-ounce containers of salsa from specific restaurants and just sit there and just like that. I mean, that's all I'll eat all day. I don't care. If we're going to talk about Chicago specifically, the Lower West Side, the Pilsen neighborhood, you have to go there. Anything solid Mexican food. I'm gonna butcher this name. Five Rabanitos.
Rabanitos. That's radishes.
Okay. They some of the best Mexican food I have ever had.
Wow.
So if you were ever in Chicago, seek it out. It's a little bit out of the way, but it is worth it. Shout out to Taco Lulu, which is one of my lunch go-tos. But out in the south, like it's weird. Like the entire state of Illinois is just phenomenal when it comes to finding like great authentic Mexican food. Mago Cantina, Sammy's out in the suburbs. I kid you not, one of the best al pastor tacos I've
Oh,
ever had. This place called Charles Fast Food. Uh, and I it's funny saying it out loud, and I feel like this every time I say it. It's located in a mobile gas station,
of
but
course.
it's seasoned right. The corn tortillas are amazing. Just top it with the onion cilantro. It needs nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. And again, like I could eat tacos, I could eat enchiladas all day. Just pair it with a good salsa. Like I'm very judgy when it comes to salsas because I feel like if a place does not have a good guac, if it doesn't have a good salsa, it's not going to be a good restaurant. Like that's
Yeah.
plain and simple. If you can't get the basics right, you're not going to get the food right.
Oh man, you're making me. Yeah, it's dinner time out here in LA, so I can't eat before we're doing one of these live streams. So I just have to make sure I gotta. But I'm hungry and actually made Mexican food tonight. So
There you go.
yes, a lot of beans, a lot of rice, some taco meat. It's gonna be yeah. It got some guac and it's good now. Which now the taco lulus you mentioned,
Yes.
favorite meats or
I
favorite
mean
fillings
the
for a taco.
Oh man, I mean, I keep it simple. It's for the toppings on the meat, it's just the onion, cilantro. That is it. Like if when it comes to that, like don't need
Carne
the lettuce, don't
asada.
need the tomato, none of that stuff. Um, Meats, very simple. Carnitas and al pastor.
Oh,
Those are my two, and I'm good to go.
oh man. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's why I always love doing this because we always end up with a smile on our faces because as someone on the show once said, Mexican food is just happiness. So
That
let's
is
spread the
fact.
happiness. Let's spread the happiness. And I can't wait to get out that you do it, get out to the Lower East Side with you and just after a Cub game and yeah, we'll quick stop at Murphy's and then boom, vámonos. Let's get down to tacos. Oh man.
Let's
Mi
do it.
amigo, mi amigo, let's close up shop. Where can they put it all out there? I know we did it in the intro. Where can people find you?
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Stephen with a PH _ Roto. Find my writing at ShyCitySports.com. And yeah, check out the beef jerky at John'sElginMarket.com. We ship everywhere. And always hit me up. DMs can get you a special little discount on that as well.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, geez, again, one of the great guys, one of the great guys. We got connected about a year ago, and un gran placer, as we would say in Spanish. So, familia, eso es todo for our show. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Un millón de gracias for that. Again, please go to Fantasy Points. Get your put Familia 20, Familia 22, Familia 22. Get your subscription. Get your NFL draft guide. It's so good, so good, so good, like they would say in Sweet Caroline. So also make sure special thanks to Anchor for being our hosting network, putting us on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Again, you can find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's Familia FFB, Familia. So again, muchas gracias to our buen invitado, Steven, and also to you, to our wonderful guests are in the chat. As always, man, the chat has just been on fire. Who would think that it's the off season? But and so muchas gracias everybody, and thank you all for you watching. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.